Yo, what is up guys, your boy Zakage here with a movie, and this what if is what if Deku was the Incredible Hulk. Hulk is my favorite hero of all time before I even knew what the word hero meant, so this holds a near and dear place in my heart. So I hope you guys going to enjoy the what if. We start our story off with Izuku. He's 5 years old and he's currently on a jet to Island, where some of the world's most intellectual minds reside. A year prior to all of this, Izuku had his quirk tested, and it was an intelligence quirk. But not like the others, this intelligence quirk was above all other intelligence quirks. So Izuku had been put through different tests which lasted about a year, and even All Might got involved, who suggested Izuku's intellect would be most useful at Island's research facility. Inko wasn't so keen on the idea, but after All Might offered her to pay for his education at Island and for housing and for food, basically paying for her whole life, she couldn't refuse. So Izuku and Inko arrived at the airport and are greeted by Professor David Shield. Inko approached and they shaked hands, but she saw something moving behind the professor's leg. She looked down and a little Melissa was hiding behind her father's leg, and Inko bent her knees to get down to her level and said, "Hi, you're so cute. You look about the same age as little Izuku here." And Izuku kept his distance from them but gave a little wave, and so did Melissa. Professor Shield escorted them out of the airport to a small housing area of the island. When Inko saw, her eyes lit up. It was a small neighborhood of around 5 to 6 houses with amazing architectural designs. As they drove down the street, her head was glued to the window like a child looking at the different houses, some with expensive cars at the driveway and others with artificial beaches in the backyard. After 2 minutes, the car pulled up in the driveway of their new house. A 2-story beast of a house with a 4-car garage, perfectly manicured hedges, and a colorful garden. Inko rushed inside to see all the rooms while Izuku slowly walked up to the house, but turned around and waved goodbye to his new friend. So Izuku entered the house and closed the door behind them and stared at the high ceiling with a single chandelier. So he and Inko got their stuff together and unpacked into their new home. Izuku's room was massive and his bed could fit 10 more of himself. So fast forward to the end of the day. After all the stress of packing, Izuku and Inko were sitting around the dining table having some food Inko made earlier. Well, not really eating it, he was just playing around with his food, using his fork to stab at the meat and kick around some of the rice. Inko saw this and asked Izuku what's wrong? Inko said, "I'm gonna miss Kacchan and all my other friends." Inko got out of her chair and hugged Izuku, telling him it's gonna be okay and they'll visit whenever they can. Izuku wiped away a bit of the tears that were starting to form, and he said, "Promise?" And she nodded her head and said back, "Promise." Fast forward to the next day, and it's time for Izuku's first day at school. He walked into class and sees the blonde-haired girl from the other day. The teacher calls Izuku to the front to introduce himself, so he says his name is Izuku Midoriya, and the teacher says, "Well, Izuku, I'll have you sit next to," and he's looking around, thinking, and then says, "Melissa. She's our top student, so she'll show you the ropes." Izuku goes to sit next to Melissa, and these desks are really big, so students are put into pairs and each pair share a table. So the class goes on and Izuku keeps glancing over at Melissa, who is always writing something in her notebook, but she catches every glance Izuku made. She just didn't say anything. Soon the bell rings and class is over for the day, and while Izuku is packing his stuff, Melissa offers to show him around the school and he takes her up on the offer. They walk around for about an hour and she shows him all the classes, libraries, cafeteria, basically the entire school. And after she explains how the school works, which I'll explain to you so it makes sense, The school technically has only 3 grades: beginner, intermediate, and expert, and to move up a grade, a student has to create something from what they've learned in their pairs. So they can make anything really, like robots, a car fueled from water, or even an extension to the school. But it had to be impactful enough for their teacher to decide for them to move up a grade. As they join the school, students are given a theme to follow throughout the year to basically form their creations around. And the theme Izuku and Melissa got was a new hero. No explanation comes with it, just go with your interpretation. So after Melissa's little tour around the campus, they had to talk about their theme, and Izuku thought of it literally. Maybe he could make a new hero, the ultimate hero. Melissa thought this was an interesting idea, and Izuku's mind is already at work thinking how he can make this new hero. Since giving someone any sort of power is damn near impossible, how about they enhance what man already has, like their strengths? But they were stuck with that idea for a pretty long time. 4 days in fact, and while in the middle of a lecture, the idea hit Izuku like a ton of bricks. He even jumped out of his seat and shouted, "Gamma radiation!" Everyone turned to look at him with confused faces, and him being embarrassed slowly sank back into his seat, and the teacher just said whatever and just continued his lesson. Izuku wrote down his plan on a piece of paper to Melissa, and Izuku would use gamma rays to penetrate the body and alter its DNA. They both thought this would be a good idea and began researching, but they were in way over their heads. This was biochemistry, something that they were both completely lost on, but this didn't stop them. Weeks of research turned into months and frequent study nights over each other's houses, and they actually decided to turn Izuku's shed into their very own lab. This did take a very long time. They basically tore the entire thing down and replaced it with cement walls, tile floors. Obviously they didn't do this themselves. They contracted workers to do it. So I'll be doing a few time skips back to back because I want to get to the interesting bit. At 10 years old, Izuku and Melissa finished their lab and progressed to the intermediate course. They start doing tests on rats and other small rodents, even some fish, and the results were promising. The animals grew defined muscles and had increased speed and strength. This impressed their students enough to forward them to the expert course by age 16. Now, time for the real deal, human experiments. Unfortunately, they don't have people lining up outside their lab to be tested on, so Izuku volunteered himself. Obviously, Melissa was completely against the idea because after the doses, the animals died, and Izuku tried to calm her down, saying, "Don't worry, I'll be using smaller doses so it won't have any negative effects." She still wasn't happy with it, but she knows how passionate Izuku is, so she just let him go through with it. The small doses turned out to be an actual success. They gave Izuku temporary bursts of superhuman speed and strength. This made Izuku want to crank it up all the way, so at age 16, the two were ready to graduate, but they only needed one more test. So their teacher, along with Inko and David Shield, came to see the final results of their experiments. For it, they had to extend the lab and make a bomb-proof room. It isn't actually bomb-proof, the walls are just really reinforced, just in case. So while preparing for the test, Melissa went into the testing room to make sure everything was set, while the teacher, Inko, and David Shield were setting up outside to watch behind the reinforced glass. While Melissa was completing the wiring, a node short-circuited, causing a spark. This was a deadly accident. The machine started the process of emitting gamma rays, and the sirens around the lab started going off. And on the monitor, the time until the release was counting down. Izuku ran quickly and slipped through the closing door just in time. He grabbed Melissa and went to the back of the room. He broke a glass case containing a material that gamma rays can't penetrate. He threw it over her just in time because as he did, the machine went off, emitting a critical amount of gamma rays, all into Izuku. The machine overheated and a small explosion sent some of the non-reinforced glass shattering. And in the observation area, Inko, David, and the teacher were all screaming, trying to do something to get the door open. But they just had to sit there and watch. English, hello. Moments later, when the smoke died down, they looked through the glass and saw Melissa still there on the ground, covered by the blanket, but above her was a hole in the ceiling. A second later, they felt the ground rumble, knocking over some of the science equipment, and when the door was finally able to open, David Shield ran inside to check on Melissa, and Inko ran outside to see what that sound was. She opened the door and in the distance saw something jumping away, something green, but she didn't really care. She just wanted to know where Izuku was, but little did she know that was Izuku. So we see Izuku, or in this case the green giant Hulk, jumping across the island to the water. He walked along the ocean floor for days until he reached another island, the same island in the My Hero Academia Heroes Rising movie. The one where, spoilers, Bakugo got one for all. It's not even spoilers, bro. Go watch the movie. So yeah, Hulk walks up onto the beach and the people there see this monster walk out of the ocean with seaweed dangling from his shoulders. Izuku looked at them with his green eyes and got angry. He charged at a man that had a shield quirk. He can make shields appear anywhere in his body, so he had a shield on his palms and tried blocking the punches, but Hulk's punch sent the man flying across the beach. Now everyone was fleeing the area, but he wasn't finished. Hulk entered the city and went on a rampage, breaking down buildings, destroying cars, killing civilians. But heroes on the main island were informed of the attack and were told that this villain was very, very strong, the likes of All Might. So top heroes were called in: Endeavor, Best Jeanist, and Hawks. All Might would have been sent there, but at the time, this was at the same time as the USJ just happened. So All Might's power got cut in half. Day 2 of Izuku's rampage on the island, and after being in the Hulk state for 4 full days, you would think anger, the thing that fuels the Hulk, would be running out, because what's there to be angry about? But this wasn't happening. Izuku couldn't take back control in his state right now. He was just too weak. After leaving the city in ruins, Hulk was ready to go on to the next. So he began walking back to the beach, but some fabric wrapped around him, stopping him. Hulk turned around and he sees the 3 heroes that were sent to take him down. Hulk easily broke through Best Jeanist's fiber bindings and ran towards him. Endeavor thought he could take Hulk, so he ran towards him, and when their fists collided, Endeavor's whole arm broke like a twig and he was sent flying into a tree. Hulk shouted, "Endeavor! You damn monster!" and he flew towards the Hulk, creating a sword with his feather, and sliced Hulk repeatedly across the chest over and over. But he didn't even flinch. He stood there tanking all the hits. When Hulk stopped to take a breather, Hulk said, "Weak," and grabbed Hulk's hand and slammed him into the ground. Hulk reeled back his fist to go for another punch, but Best Jeanist stopped him by using his fabric. Hulk stared at him and smiled. He used his own fabric and dragged Best Jeanist towards him, punching him midair. Hulk was going to finally finish this, but again, he keeps getting interrupted. Endeavor, with blood covering his face, stared down Hulk. He sent waves of fireball that scorched the Hulk's body, but he just healed itself. Hulk took Best Jeanist and threw him at Endeavor, knocking the 2 out, and Hulk chuckled menacingly. And he was about to go back into the ocean, but Hawks grabbed his ankle, refusing to let him destroy anywhere else. Hulk just broke free of his grip easily and stepped on his arm, breaking them both. He walked back into the ocean, now towards the main island of Japan. This entire time, a helicopter was hovering a distance away, and in it, Melissa and her father, who set out to find Izuku. Melissa didn't know what this green creature was, but felt connected to it, like how she felt around Izuku. Melissa told her father this and he smiled. You see, David was very interested in Izuku's research because he wanted to sell it to the Japanese government to make super soldiers. And the test was also a success. He only needs to figure out how to control this beast. But while in his thoughts, Melissa shouted, "He's gone!" and they looked back to the beach and Hulk was nowhere to be seen. So David Shield called the Hero Agency to tell them what happened, and this information spread like wildfire, especially when the news picked it up. Reports were broadcasted all around Mustafa and surrounding areas to beware of a large green monster. It took down 3 of the most powerful heroes in Japan, and when this came on the news, All Might was confused. Maybe All for One was behind it? Wait, no, he defeated him. Or maybe it was one of those green Nomu things. Either ways, he has to train his successor to master the quirk, and quickly. Let's switch perspective to his successor, Mirio Togata, a member of the Big Three of UA, one of the most accomplished students at the school. He was chosen to be the successor of All Might's quirk for every reason I just mentioned, and also because All Might sort of saw himself in Mirio, a kind-hearted hero, but Mirio saw the hero system differently, and he wanted to change it. Mirio didn't agree with how heroes were basically glorified celebrities, and most only thought of the aspect of being a hero and didn't focus on saving people. Like, basically they wanted to be famous and make money. They didn't want to save people. So Mirio didn't agree with this at all and wanted to change it, but unlike some people, wink wink, Stain, Mirio didn't blame any of the heroes for doing this because it's the system's fault. That's how it was designed, and he wanted to create his own system and be the shield, foreshadowing, people wanted. And with One for All, he could finally make it happen. So Mirio trains day in and day out, and unlike Izuku, he was a natural, similar to All Might when he first got the quirk, but obviously it's not 100% because it's way stronger. So Mirio can command around 30% of the quirk around this time. And Mirio actually has been having some dreams of different people, but they felt like they were connected to them. And he started to demonstrate other quirks like dark tendrils. So, back with Izuku, who's still Hulk. After 4 days of walking, he finally made it to the shores of Western Japan. He found himself in a forest and exhausted. And as soon as he found a small cave to take shelter, Hulk passed out. I realize I keep mixing up the names, so from now on, if Izuku is in his Hulk form, I'll just call him Hulk, and if he's in his human form, I'll say Izuku. So, Izuku woke up in a dark, damp cave. His neck hurt a bit since he was resting on a rock, but he soon realized that he was him, you could say. He looked down to his hand and they were normal, not giant sized. Then down to the rest of his body, realized his shorts fell off since Hulk stretched them out. So he quickly pulled up his pants and went outside the cave to look around. He saw nothing but trees, but decided to go wherever the wind takes him. He started walking in a straight line, and for 3 hours, nothing. Worse, he was starting to get hungry, but in the distance he saw a road, which means it could lead to a town or something. So he quickly got on it and followed it, and not long after, a truck started to pass. It had a bunch of goods like fruits, bananas, and stuff like that. He flagged it down, and the guy was kind enough, so he stopped, pulled over, and drove the kid to a nearby fishing village. The man dropped Izuku off and gave him 1,000 yen to buy some clothes, which he did. A vendor was selling cheap clothes, and Izuku made sure to get the biggest sized, just in case. So, Izuku spent time in this village just sitting around the street corners begging for money, and surprisingly, after only a day, he had 2,000 yen, which is a bit less than 20 USD. Seems people are more willing to give a poor kid money. So that's what Izuku did for the day. Let's check out with Melissa and her wonderful father. I'm being sarcastic if you couldn't tell. David Shield was on his computer almost 24/7 checking satellite images to try and find that thing. Melissa thought he was being overly kind, trying to find his friend. She struggled to say friend because with Izuku not here to play around with and make fun of and trying to outsmart each other, she realized how much she liked him. He even shielded her with his own body in the accident. so she couldn't sit still and have her father do all the work. So she decided to take a helicopter she made herself and survey coastal areas of Japan, coincidentally the western shore. After a day of searching, she saw something in the sand and landed some distance away to avoid blowing away all the sand with the helicopter blades. She walked up to it and it was a footprint, and a massive one. She put her foot inside of it and it was twice, if not bigger than hers. So she knew she was in the right place. She immediately called her father and told her what she found, and he couldn't be any happier. He hung up the phone and got into contact with an old friend, All Might. Meanwhile, Izuku has been reading. He used some of the money he got to buy some books on local vegetation. Why? To help find the antidote to his gamma radiation. While reading it at a small library, he found out about a rare white flower that could help him, an emphasis on rare. No one has seen one in 100 years, and no, I'm not gonna say Izuku finds the flower. Izuku finds the flower. Okay, I'm just kidding. But he is whenever he's not begging for money, he is reading or he's searching for it, because that's the only way to get rid of the Hulk persona, of himself. So one night when Izuku went to bed in a nearby homeless shelter, David Shield and All Might were staking out the area. They had to wait until morning though, and the village wasn't very big, so he couldn't be hiding for long. The next morning, Izuku walked out of the shelter to go to the library to give back the book he borrowed. While walking, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something is watching him. So Izuku gets to the library and hands the librarian the book. She says, "Wow, you finished that surprisingly fast." And Izuku says, "Yeah, I'm a fast reader, I guess." She smiles at him and gives him back the money he used to rent it. So he goes around browsing for more books, and he turned down the nature section and saw someone he wasn't expecting, a girl with blonde hair and glasses, Melissa. Izuku thinks, wait, Melissa, she can't see me like this. He quickly went out of sight, but Melissa caught a glance of someone, and she walked around the corner but saw no one. She kept walking around, and it was like a cat and mouse game. They were going around at the same time, but eventually Melissa sees him and says, "Hey, stop!" Izuku froze at the sound of her voice, and Melissa walked up to him. From behind, she says, "Do I know you?" And Izuku slowly turned around and says, "Hey, Mel." And tears started flowing from her eyes. Melissa gave Izuku a bear hug, saying, "Don't ever leave me again." And they held this hug for a while before separating. She said, "How did you even get out here?" Izuku rubbed the back of his neck and said, "It's a long story." Melissa said, "Don't worry, we'll have time to talk when we get back home." But as soon as she says this, All Might walks in through the entrance. And Izuku sees him and is immediately worried. He knows what he's here for. All Might said, "Stop, kid, and I won't have to hurt you." Izuku turned to Melissa and said, "Please run." She said, "Why?" But Izuku just shouted at her, "Run!" and pushed her. All Might approached Izuku and grabbed him. He tried flailing around, but it was no use. He was way weaker than the #1 hero. But his heart rate began increasing and his eyes turned green. All Might walked out of the library holding Izuku, but once he stepped outside, he felt the kid's hand get bigger. He looked back and Izuku was growing in size. His shirt tore from his massive muscles and his skin grew green. All Might thought, so this is what took old Enji down, then said out loud, "Try this," and sent a Detroit smash in the middle of his chest. But Hulk didn't even step back. He grabbed All Might's hand to break it, but due to his quick thinking, All Might managed to slip through. He made some distance between them, but this didn't matter to Hulk. He raised both his hands in the air and interlocked his fingers and said, "Hulk, smash!" and slammed his hands down into the ground. The ground underneath All Might began to crumble, and he was falling but grabbed onto the edge of the cracks. But the cracking didn't stop. It spread to the library that Melissa was in, and she felt the tremors and went outside. but a chasm opened up beneath her. She started falling, but Hulk saw this, and out of instinct, like the little shred of control Izuku had, made Hulk dash towards her, grabbing her hand just in time. He pulled her out and held her between his forearm and his chest, and All Might, at this time, got out on his own. He had an earpiece in, and David Shield who was watching from a distance, said, "Get my daughter from that monster!" All Might tried, but every step couldn't have been his last. The ground was still creating cracks, and Hulk was ready to jump off, but Melissa turned to look into his eyes, and she placed her hands onto his cheek. She said, "Please, you'll be running forever. I promise I'll make sure you get out." And in his mind, Izuku was overcome with emotions. All he wanted was to be alone with her. Hulk began to shrink down to the size of a regular person, and he was half naked and weak, but Melissa embraced him. She realized from all this time apart how much she cared for Izuku and said, "I won't let him go again." Like, she thinks this in her mind. All Might carefully made his way over and grabbed Izuku by the arms, restricting him. Soon, law enforcement arrived and placed Izuku into court-canceling cuffs, which really wouldn't do anything, and hauled him off in a armored van. Melissa tried going with him, but they had orders to only take the monster. Melissa saw her dad walking up towards them, and she ran to him and asked, why won't they let her see him? And David said, "Come on, Melissa, you can't be serious. Monsters like that should be locked up when they aren't useful." Melissa couldn't believe her father's words and ran off, and David sighed and sent shoulders to retrieve her. Wow, my English is impeccable today. So they had no problem getting Melissa back and brought her back to her father. So with Izuku, he was taken to Tartarus prison and put into a heavily reinforced, somebody give me a round of applause, put into a heavily reinforced room with a steel door weighing over 300 pounds and walls with multiple layers making up different types of material made of... Oh my god, I'm gonna punch something.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
In Tartarus prison, Izuku was placed into a heavily reinforced room with a steel door weighing over 300 pounds and walls with multiple layers made up of different types of materials. Izuku sat in his huge empty cell, waiting. So, this is around the time of the start of everyone's internship, right after the sports festival. And after a week, things have been going normally, but Melissa has been going to the head office of the Hero Agency every day, begging for the release of Izuku. But she soon realizes if they ever listen to her, it was a SWAT team that brought Izuku away. So if she were to free him, it would not be so legal. So Melissa started walking towards the police station when she bumps into someone. She fell back, but the guy reached out and grabbed her arm. Melissa looked up and sees a guy with big blue eyes and blonde hair. He said, "I'm so sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going." And Melissa responded, No, I wasn't either, it's fine." And Melissa kept looking at him like she knew him from somewhere. Before he ran off, she asked, "Hey, are you Mirio?" Mirio stopped and said, "Yep, that's me." Then it was like Melissa had an epiphany, like an idea to help Izuku came to her. But it was down to Mirio if he wanted to do it or not. Which she didn't expect, but it doesn't hurt asking. So she brings Mirio off into an alley, and it was well lit since it was around midday. So no crackheads. Melissa explains the whole story about her and Izuku, and how she thinks that they could help them. Canon Mirio would either shrug this off or literally report her because what she's thinking is illegal. But Mirio in this wanted to make a change to a flawed system. And with the help of Izuku, it could be the thing they need. So Mirio agreed with her plan, which I'll explain when it comes around to it. Mirio and Melissa get into a car Melissa had parked nearby and drove to the prison, Tartarus prison, Or at least where they think it is, because the people who own the prison are smart and don't broadcast the location of the world's most dangerous criminals everywhere. But good thing Google Earth did all the work for them. Once they were close enough to not set off any alarms, Mirio did his part. He permeated through the ground and phased underneath he permeated through the ground and made it to the prison cells. He entered one of the cells and said, "Izuku, let's go. I'm here to save you." And the guy looked at Mirio and said, "Nah, bro, I think you got the wrong cell, bro. I think Izuku, you one cell over." And Mirio said, "Oh, my bad. Just pretend I wasn't here." He says, "Whatever, man." And Mirio leaves. This time, Mirio phases into the right cell and he saw Izuku in the corner and ran over to him. Izuku looked back like, "Who the hell are you?" And the guy said, "Don't worry, Melissa sent me." And he grabbed Izuku and they phased out of the prison. Normally, Mirio's permeation doesn't extend to other people, but it's buffed by One for All. So Mirio makes his way outside of the prison without being detected and made it back to Melissa. Izuku sees her leaning against the car waiting and he walks up to her saying, "You miss me?" And Melissa runs up and hugs Izuku tightly. "I still have the cuffs on, take it easy." And Melissa says, "Oh, my bad," and whips out some bolt cutters and breaks the cuffs. So the three get into the car and drive off to the outskirts of the city and to a garage-sized shed in the forest. Melissa said, "Well, this is our base of operations." Izuku and Mirio stopped, like they looked confused, and Melissa sees their confusion and turns to Mirio and says, "Don't you remember what you told me? You wanted to change the system. So I figured the best way to do that is make our own hero agency." Mirio was lost for words, so Melissa grabbed both their hands and took them into the new HQ. So they opened the door and it creaked slowly open, then a piece of the ceiling fell off. Melissa did an awkward laugh and said, "It's a work in progress." So work they did. While the hero students at UA were going through their second week of internships, Izuku along with Melissa put their minds together to work on their base. They didn't do much since they would need heavy machinery, but they made the whole place more stable and actually, livable. They put up support beams in and outside the building and set up a computer network. Izuku used this to access some satellites, so they had view of the city all the time. So while Mirio is patrolling, they could give him real-time information. So Mirio is patrolling the Hosu city area, and this time he's been at it for about an hour and it's been really quiet. So he radios into Izuku and Melissa saying he's gonna head over to the next city over. They agree, but at the same time, a red indicator lights up on their radar and they tell Mirio to wait while they check it out. They zoom in and see the hero killer Stain attacking a hero and a hero in training. 2 heroes in training, I should say. Melissa tells Mirio to head over there ASAP and he powers up to 50% of One for All and jumps towards the pinged location. While falling, he sees ice spikes shooting up into the air, and Mirio punches the air in front of him, launching wind pressure, smashing the ice. He lands in front of Todoroki, who's surprised to see his ice shatter so easily. He tries talking to the guy in front of him, but Mirio doesn't talk. He goes in, defeats and captures the bad guy and heads out. No need for praise. Mirio's outfit isn't the same either. It was designed by Melissa. It was a black suit with his signature red cape. Just imagine Superman wearing Black Panther's outfit with his cape. But obviously the suit isn't made of vibranium. Well, maybe not yet. Wink wink question mark. Anyways, as the condensed air from the ice settled, the hero killer had an angry look on his face. "Oh, another wannabe hero." But before he could finish, Mirio dashed towards the hero killer in a flash of lightning and he kicked him, sending him to the side of a dumpster. He dropped his sword and was clenching his stomach in pain, and he looked up to the masked hero standing above him. Mirio kneeled down and placed a tiny chip on the side of Stain's neck, and it latched on and electrocuted him, knocking him out. Mirio hoisted Stain over his shoulder and disappeared below the ground. Todoroki, Ida, and Manuel were all dumbfounded, like who was that, and how was he so strong? Mirio flew through the ground and popped up back outside their base. He walked in and threw Stain into a makeshift cell they built. Mirio took off his mask and said, "Wow, this suit and those chips, they work amazing." And Izuku and Melissa gives him a thumbs up because they were still surveying Hosu. And it looks like more trouble. Dozens of Nomus were storming the city and Mirio was ready to go back into action. But Izuku said it wasn't worth being seen. Plus, the pros seemed to have everything under control. So they just watched, and like canon, heroes like Endeavor took care of it. Gran Torino wasn't there this time, but I mean, he didn't do anything crazy. So I would say Endeavor just got a bit injured and they still had the same outcome. So after the fight, Endeavor was hospitalized for some minor injuries, and while in the hospital, Todoroki came to talk to him. He walked up to the side of his bed and said, "Endeavor." And Endeavor smiled and said, "So, my son wants to talk to me. What is it?" Todoroki didn't want to talk to this bastard, but he has to. Todoroki went on to explain with his encounter with a hero wearing all black. He was powerful and he seemed to have electricity and a speed quirk, and from what he saw, maybe even invisibility. Endeavor was confused and thought Todoroki was just pulling his legs. How could someone have 3 different quirks? But if he was, the question would then be, why would he even lie? It really makes no sense for Todoroki to lie anyways. So he believes him and sends some of his interns at his agency to investigate the situation. Again, I don't know if someone at the news channel has some all-knowing quirk, but the story was picked up along with security camera footage from the alleyways. It was obviously really bad quality, but you can make out certain people in the footage. And since there was no hero registered that looked anything like that, the news classified him as a vigilante. So during the following weeks, Mirio still had to keep up his persona as a school student. And during this time, Izuku would master his transformation by doing breathing exercises, martial arts, and anger management. He even allowed Melissa to slap him across the face whenever she wanted, which she obviously didn't deny. So a week before Class 1A and Class 1B's trip to the forest training camp, Izuku was able to control his transformation. And with this new control, Izuku could finally do some special training with Melissa, if you get what I'm saying. Because normally Izuku's heart rate would get too high and he would transform. So with this, Melissa developed a suit for Izuku, the same color theme as Mirio, black and some more black, so Izuku wouldn't tear through his clothes while transforming. So while Izuku is getting some drip, Mirio is trying to convince Nejire and Tamaki to join SHIELD. Get it? Foreshadowing from earlier, SHIELD, that's the hero agency name. So anyways, at first, they think he is just joking around like he usually does, but Mirio ain't smiling, he's serious and they know that, so, they really think about it. Mirio says, why become a pro hero? All most of them do is for the fame and money. Yes, money is necessary to live, but I have 2 of the smartest people you'll ever meet, and they can help bring in that money. Nejire and Tamaki are still apprehensive, and Mirio just tells them to think about it. So, onto the forest training camp. Izuku monitors the surrounding area while Melissa does her usual routes. Izuku doesn't have to protect them, but he knows that villains might appear to attack them, so this is the perfect place to look. So by now, the base is looking more high-tech. Izuku bought some cheap electronics to build a better surveillance system and better jails. So if the prisoner touches the bars, the chip goes off and electrocutes them. So at the forest, nothing much changes, and the 2 classes go into the forest to do their test of courage, and this is on day 3. While surveying, Izuku gets a marker from his radar. Also, I should probably mention the radar just shows when someone activates their quirk. So Izuku zooms and sees a group of about 6 people standing out like in the middle of nowhere. This is the Vanguard Action Squad. But some of the members are actually missing, like Spinner, Moonfish, Magne, etc. They aren't there because Stain's speech is what inspired them to be villains. And if you forgot, Stain was captured by S.H.I.E.L.D., so no speech equals no next generation of villains. So Izuku sees this and is ready to suit up and head to the field. He does, and as he's about to step outside, Melissa stops him and she tells him to be safe and kisses him on the cheek. Now Izuku was ready. He transforms and jumps towards the training camp while Mirio was headed there as well. He was instructed to take care of the main bunch while Izuku investigated something he was worried about. Izuku lands on a cliff, and when he looks down, he sees a little boy dangling his legs off the edge of a cliff. And from behind, a muscular man was approaching. Izuku, or now Hulk, dropped down and grabbed the guy by the head and swung him into the stone wall. Muscular shook it off and went to increase his muscle size, but Hulk kept smashing him into the wall over and over, not letting up. Muscular's body couldn't take the force behind the punch, and he soon passed out. By the time he was finished, Kota was already running back to the main building where all the classes were. That just saves Izuku more work. He places a chip on Muscular's neck and carried him while he went to help out Mirio. While this is happening, Mirio was dealing with the rest of the Vanguard. First, he took down Twice and Toga really easily, chipping them so they won't attack him if they regain consciousness. So Mirio was looking for the next member, and that's when he came across Dabi, who started to burn trees. He was thinking of the best way to approach when the green giant landed next to him. Dabi freaked out and sent flames towards it, but it didn't even burn his outfit. Hulk ran at Dabi, preparing a punch, and Dabi stood his ground, putting up a wall of flames, but from behind, Mirio 40% smashed Dabi in the jaw. That was gonna hurt in the morning. So Hulk goes over and chips Dabi. 4 down, now 2 to go. Kurogiri and Shigaraki were still outside the forest waiting for the 4 to return. Izuku asked Melissa over the radio what were their specific location, and they got pinned, so they headed over to it. Shigaraki's itching like his neck, wondering, why isn't the forest in ashes yet? But from the sky, the 4 members of the Vanguard Action Squad fell at his feet. He was confused and then looked up. Hulk fell right onto him, knocking him over, and Shigaraki tried touching Hulk, but he jumped away. Kurogiri was ready to teleport them out, but from behind him, he was cuffed with the same quirk-canceling handcuffs Izuku wore in prison, stopping Kurogiri from using his quirk. Shigaraki and Hulk were not a good matchup. First, Hulk had a lot of surface area, means a lot of area for Shigaraki to touch. So he lets Mirio take this one. Mirio was absolutely perfect. All attempts to use his decay, he just permeated through his body, and it went right through. So with a well-timed punch, Mirio took Shiggy out and chipped him. They can't really do the same for Kurogiri, but they had to develop a special cell for him. They gathered up all the villains they took down and was ready to head back to base. But a sludge portal opened up and All For One stepped out to join the party. Back at the forest training camp, Aizawa was trying to figure out what started the forest fire when he saw some dirt being kicked up from Mirio's fight. So he assumed villains were infiltrating the forest and called All Might. So by the time All For One appeared, All Might was on his way. All For One did a slow clap congratulating the two for taking down his entire league. But it's time to face someone stronger. All For One disappeared from both of their visions and reappeared behind Mirio and punched him in the back. This caused Mirio to go flying and the villain he was holding fell. All For One kneeled down and stole Toga and Muscular's quirk. Hulk dropped who he was holding and clapped, sending a violent wind towards All For One, blowing him away. Hulk jumped over to Mirio to check if he was okay. He was, but All For One punched him directly in the spine, and if he tried to get up, he may never walk again. Hulk said, "No move, I take care of him." Mirio wanted to argue, but he couldn't. He was in a situation where he just had to sit and watch. All For One was getting back on his feet, so Hulk ran at him. AFO increased his muscle size and the two punches collided, creating a shockwave and broke the ground beneath them. They kept their fists together and their hands were shaking from the force. Hulk used his other hand and punched AFO across the face, breaking his breathing apparatus or whatever he had on his face. All For One sent a gust of wind towards Hulk, similar to what he did to him, and Hulk withstood the attack though. Hulk then interlocked his fingers together and, like a hammer, swung at All For One's jaw, knocking him up into the air. All For One was struggling to get up and Hulk was ready to finish it, but he heard a voice from his earpiece. Melissa spoke to him. "Izuku, don't go close to him. I've been working on something and this should take care of him." So Hulk followed her instructions and he stepped back, and from the clouds a beam of light shot down and hit All For One. The beam was so powerful it cracked the ground around him, and when it slowly disappeared, All For One was left on the ground, scorched like a burnt piece of toast. Melissa came back on the earpiece and she said, "You like it? It was a little something I've been working on. Finally got to try it out." Hulk said, "I like." He then picked up all 6 members of the Vanguard Action Squad he and Mirio took down, and All For One and Mirio. But Hulk is Hulk, this really isn't anything. And with them in tow, he jumped off to the base. When he jumped, All Might finally arrived, and seeing this thing fly off, he looks around to the surrounding area and it looks like a complete battlefield. But who was fighting and what was that beam of light he saw? So many questions but no answers. All Might went down to the camp to meet up with Aizawa anyways. So back at SHIELD HQ, aka a shed in the woods, Izuku arrived at the door and Melissa was ready to take Mirio and start treatment on his back, because this was something serious. A few days go by and she made him a brace, but he would have to go to a proper hospital to get a surgery. So without options, they did. After only waiting a day, Mirio had the surgery because they showed the doctors his provisional license, like his hero license, so it made it top priority. The doctors who operated on Mirio was going to check on his progress, but when he opened his room door, the hospital bed was empty and the window next to it open. All that was left was a note saying, "Thanks for the help." With Mirio recovering and somewhat able to walk, Melissa think it was finally time to go public. She worked some magic and got into every news outlet around the city to broadcast a message. On screen, people saw all of the villains SHIELD has captured in prison cells, including All For One. Then came Melissa. She spoke. "What you just saw was some of the top most wanted villains captured. Some were escapees, then the camera pans to Muscular. Others were thought to be dead, then the camera pans to All For One. But SHIELD made quick work to clean up the streets from these high-profile criminals, and we won't stop there. SHIELD is here to protect you." And it shows Melissa along with Izuku and Mirio with the SHIELD logo above them, and it fades to black. Once back in control, the news stations were panicking, wondering how they had access to their network. While heroes were wondering who those kids were, people weren't blind. They wanted answered how these kids captured villains wanted for years. And from the mounting pressure, the hero agency had to have a press meeting. All it was just a roast session really. How did these kids do your jobs, and like the other questions, other like remarks like that. The CEO of the company that made the rules for the heroes to follow, like they tried to come up with an excuse saying that they were just vigilantes working against the law, but seriously, no one bought this. So from that day, SHIELD began to expand. First was the main issue, money, but Melissa and Izuku had a plan. to develop and sell weapons to the Japanese military. And since they weren't your everyday ARs and whatever guns are out there, the military bought it like hotcakes. These guns had infrared, just everything you can think of in a gun, and it was light, so it was easy to carry around and things like that. And from this, the Shield just got more money. They got a actual HQ and not a shed out in the middle of nowhere. And the floating helicarrier, it was a work in progress. So time skip to 1 year, and by this time Shield was looking more like we know it today, and Nejire and Tamaki finally came around and joined Shield. Shield became too powerful. The government tried to prosecute Shield for breaking multiple laws, but what are they gonna do? Send the military to take care of them? I literally just explained that they give the military their guns. So Shield can say, oh, you're coming after me? Well, no more guns. And with that, Shield goes on to take down more of Japan's most notorious villains, finally wiping out all the remnants of the Mafia. This includes Overhaul, and they took down Gigantomachia and found and seized all the Nomus hidden by the LOV. Eventually, Shield grew in numbers, recruiting the world's strongest heroes, and after threats on Earth became almost non-existent, they looked towards the stars. So guys, I feel like that's the right place to end it. So thank you guys for sticking around to the end of the video. If you liked it, like, and if you like my content in general, feel free to subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next What If.